There is a silent epidemic occurring in modern marriages that contradicts traditional evolutionary logic. For centuries, the standard model of hypergamy dictated that women seek partners who are older, more established, and resource-rich. This was a survival mechanism. However, in the modern era, a specific anomaly has emerged that is destroying long-term marriages at an unprecedented rate. We are witnessing a massive spike in women over the age of 40, women who are seemingly happily married, financially secure, and mothers to grown children, suddenly risking everything for men who are 10, 15, or even 20 years their junior. This phenomenon is often dismissed by society as a midlife crisis or a shallow pursuit of fun. But if we look at the neurobiology, endocrinology, and evolutionary psychology behind this, we find a much more complex and darker truth. This is not a random behavioral glitch. It is a biological imperative known as the reproductive swan song, combined with a radical hormonal inversion. To understand why a 42-year-old wife suddenly craves a 25-year-old man, we must strip away the societal romance and look at the raw animalistic data. The first and most critical driver is the hormonal intersection that occurs between men and women in their middle years. This is often called the hormonal cross. In her 20s and early 30s, a woman is dominated by estrogen and progesterone. These are the nurturing hormones. They drive the desire for nesting, security, stability, and emotional connection. During this phase, she is biologically programmed to seek a provider, a man who can offer safety for her offspring. This is usually when she marries the stable older husband. However, as a woman enters her 40s and approaches perimenopause, her estrogen levels begin to drop precipitously. Estrogen is the compliance hormone. It is what makes women agreeable, nurturing, and risk-averse. As estrogen fades, it unmasks the testosterone that has always been present in her system but was previously diluted. For the first time in her life, her testosterone to estrogen ratio shifts in favor of testosterone. This creates a fundamental change in her personality and libido. She becomes less risk-averse, more aggressive, more dominant, and her sex drive shifts from being reactive, needing emotional connection to start, to spontaneous, driven by raw physical need. At the exact same time this is happening to her, her husband is likely in his late 40s or 50s. His testosterone is naturally declining. He is becoming more risk-averse, more sedentary, and less sexually aggressive. This creates a biological mismatch. She's hitting a phase of peak sexual aggression just as he is hitting a phase of sexual conservation. Her brain, now influenced by this unmasked testosterone, begins to crave the specific markers of high testosterone in a mate: energy, stamina, muscle mass, and risk-taking behavior. Who possesses these traits in abundance? Not her husband. It is the younger man. The 40-year-old woman's sudden craving for a 25-year-old is essentially a testosterone-seeking missile. She is biologically trying to match her new internal hormonal state with an external partner who mirrors it. The second driver is a phenomenon evolutionary psychologists call the dual mating strategy, or the strategic pluralism hypothesis. This theory suggests that women have evolved to pursue two different types of men depending on their life stage and environmental needs. One type is the provider for long-term care, and the other is the genetical alpha for high-quality DNA. In her youth, with dependent children, the provider was the priority. But by 40, the children are often independent, and she likely has her own career and money. The survival pressure to stay with a provider is removed. When the need for resources vanishes, the biological priority shifts back to vitality. Deep in her limbic system, there is a subconscious drive known as the last chance reproduction alarm. Even if she does not consciously want more children, her biology is aware that the fertility window is closing. Nature often triggers a massive surge in libido during the perimenopausal years, a final biological push to reproduce before the factory shuts down. This creates a subconscious attraction to the most fertile males available, while she logically knows she isn't trying to get pregnant. Her primitive brain is signaling her to acquire the most potent life force available. Younger men represent peak fertility, peak health, and peak genetic vitality. Her attraction to them is a misfiring of a reproductive instinct that is trying to race against the clock. The third element is the psychology of mortality, or terror management theory. Turning 40 is a psychological trauma for many women in a youth-obsessed culture. It is the definitive end of young adulthood. When she looks in the mirror, she sees aging. When she looks at her husband, she sees aging. He is a constant reminder of her own mortality. He complains about back pain. He talks about retirement. He is tired at 9 p.m. He reflects the reality she is trying to escape. A younger man acts as a time machine. When a 45-year-old woman is with a 28-year-old man, she is not just sleeping with him, she is consuming his youth. Through his eyes, she is not a middle-aged mother. She is a cougar, a sexual being, a conquest. He validates her desirability in a way an older man cannot. If a 50-year-old man finds her attractive, it means she looks good for her age. If a 25-year-old man finds her attractive, it means she is objectively desirable, transcending age. This dopamine hit is addictive. It temporarily suspends her fear of death and aging. She feels biologically revitalized by his energy. We must also discuss the power dynamic and the shift in mate value. In traditional relationships, the man often holds the frame because he is older and has more resources. But modern women in their 40s are often at the peak of their careers. They have money, status, and confidence. When they date a man their own age or older, they still have to compromise. With a younger man, the power dynamic flips. She is the matrix. She has the experience, the money, and the control. The younger man is often still figuring out his life. This allows the woman to step into a dominant matriarchal role that is incredibly seductive to her new, higher testosterone brain. She gets to dictate the terms of the relationship. She doesn't have to be the nagging wife asking for help. She becomes the experienced guide or the powerful mistress. This shift from being a passenger in her marriage to the driver in an affair is a massive psychological aphrodisiac. Furthermore, there is the issue of stimulus habituation. The human brain is designed to ignore constant stimuli. After 20 years of marriage, her husband's touch, his voice, and his scent have become background noise. Her nervous system has habituated to him. He no longer triggers a dopamine spike because he is predictable. A younger man represents novelty, which is the highest trigger for dopamine. But it's not just that he is new, it's that he is different. His skin feels different, more collagen. His scent is different pheromones associated with youth, and his sexual performance is radically different. Physiologically, a man in his 20s has a refractory period of minutes. A man in his 50s has a refractory period of hours or days. For a woman who is experiencing a perimenopausal surge in libido, her husband physically cannot keep up with her demand. She feels a sexual hunger that is not being fed. The younger man can perform physically in ways that validate her new aggressive sexuality. He treats her body with an intensity and urgency that her husband lost 15 years ago. This creates a feedback loop. The sex releases oxytocin and dopamine, which bonds her to the younger man, while the lack of intensity at home makes her husband seem even more obsolete. There is also a dark sociological truth regarding the invisibility complex. Society tends to erase women over 40. They stop being catcalled, they stop being checked out in bars, and they feel a loss of sexual power. A younger man breaks this invisibility. By securing a younger partner, she is signaling to other women and herself that she has beaten the system. It is a status symbol. Just as older men buy sports cars to signal virility, older women acquire younger lovers to signal relevance. Finally, we have to look at the emotional labor deficit. In many long-term marriages, the wife falls into the role of manager. She manages the kids, the house, the schedule, and often her husband's emotional state. She feels like a mother to everyone, including her spouse. A relationship with a younger man is often purely recreational. She doesn't have to wash his clothes. She doesn't have to remind him to take his cholesterol medication. She doesn't have to manage his career. He is there for one purpose: pleasure and adoration. This creates a psychological partition where the husband represents work and the lover represents play. The younger man offers an escape from the burden of being a responsible adult. With him, she can be irresponsible, reckless, and selfish, traits she has suppressed for 2 decades of raising a family. In conclusion, the craving for a younger lover is not a random moral failing. It is a perfect storm of biology and psychology. It is the collision of dropping estrogen, rising relative testosterone, the fear of aging, the end of the provider imperative, and the desperate biological drive to feel a pulse of vitality before the reproductive window closes forever. The older husband offers comfort, but comfort is the enemy of desire. The younger man offers chaos, and to a woman facing the stagnation of midlife, chaos looks a lot like life. This is the biological truth that no amount of marriage counseling can talk away. It is a battle between the civilized mind and the primitive brain, and in the 40s, the primitive brain often decides it wants to eat.